Hey guys, it's Mrs. Doherty here. So today we're starting weather, and we're going to start with the water cycle. Now, the water cycle should be a review for a lot of us. And so I am going to draw a diagram with you, and you're going to write it on a sheet of paper. So you might need lined paper or whatever paper you can find at home. So first, let's title it. Oh. All right, so this is our water cycle. Okay, so I'm going to come back in with some color and whatnot, but first I'm just going to kind of make a real basic design. So I'm going to choose to do sort of a mountain, and I'm going to put some water here. And then on this side, I'm going to do some trees. And I will talk about why I'm doing some trees in a little bit, but we've got some trees. All right, so we've got a mountain, we've got some waves, and we've got some trees. Now I'm going to start putting in some arrows to show how my water is moving and what's going to happen. So we're going to make an arrow up. Okay, there's one. And then at the top of this arrow, I am going to draw a cloud. All right. Then I'm going to have my cloud just kind of shoving over here, and I'm going to put another cloud here, and I'm going to have some things falling from the cloud if I can get my stylus to work. There we go. So we've got some liquid falling from that cloud, and then from there, my liquid is going to go down that little area and travel back to my bigger body of water, okay? So far, so good. Your picture hopefully looks like mine. And I'm going to get to the tree part in a little bit. So let me add a little bit of color, and you can grab some crayons if you want to add some color too. So I'm just going to make some blue water here. So here's my water. And I will make my rain colored so we can kind of follow that there coming down. All right. And then I'm going to have some water coming down my mountain here that is also blue. Okay. So far, so good. Let's take my plants here, my trees, and I'm going to make them green. And we've got some green here. And lastly, I'm going to put a sun because we know that the sun is our energy provider, right? The sun provides energies to ecosystems, and the sun is one of those things that gives energy to the water cycle because remember in our heat transfer, conduction, convection, radiation. Well, the sun transfers heat down on Earth through radiation, right? Through those rays that travel. Well, in water, we've got that convection current. So the surface water is going to start heating up with those rays that are shining on it. And when it gets hot enough, it is going to pop up. So I'm going to show you this with some numbers. So we're going to start in this body of water, and we're going to start rising. So here is my number 1. And that would be evaporation. I'm trying to write very slow. All right. So there is evaporation. So evaporation is basically when this liquid water heats up and turns into water vapor. So it goes from liquid to gas, and it rises up into the atmosphere as water vapor. That's known as evaporation. Step 2 of our water cycle is going to happen right in here. Keep pushing that down. There is step 2. That is going to be condensation. And again, I'm trying to write small so I can fit it all in there. So condensation, what condensation is, it's basically that water vapor that rises. As you go higher up into the atmosphere, it starts to cool. It's colder up there. So that condensation is when water vapor turns back into water droplets, and it clumps together and it forms the clouds that we can see in the sky. So clouds are formed by water vapor turning into droplets and clumping together. That's kind of our step 2 in our water cycle. All right, so far so good. So make sure your picture that you're drawing matches my picture. Make sure you have a number 1 and a number 2, because we are going to write the definitions for these coming up, but just not yet. All right, our next step, well, if you notice, my cloud is now going this way. And eventually, that cloud is going to get what is called saturated. And when something gets saturated, it means it's kind of filled. If you've ever taken a sponge and you put it in the water, that sponge will eventually not hold any more water. And that means it's saturated. And then you can squeeze the water out and it's raining down, right? It takes the water from the sponge and releases it out. So we can think of our cloud kind of like our sponge, right? So right here, our next step, which is number 3, precipitation. All right, so that's our precipitation. Now, precipitation can happen in multiple forms. You can have rain, hail, sleet, or rain, hail, sleet, snow. How did I forget snow? Rain, hail, sleet, or snow can fall. In this case, I'm just showing it as rain. So as precipitation falls, and I'm going to go back and add my arrow here. So here is my arrow. It's kind of funky. I'm messing up some other parts here. But my precipitation is falling down to the ground. And this area, I'm going to put it as a little star. Because you can see, I've got my mountain, my precipitation is kind of traveling down. Well, when precipitation falls, a bunch of things can happen. So you can have groundwater, which means that it gets infiltrated. So it means like it would soak into the ground and be used by potentially plants or other things. Or sometimes it's just groundwater and it's sort of a store to be used later. This is actually showing runoff. So I'm going to put a little star because we will talk about runoff in a little bit. So runoff basically means exactly what it says. It is running off of surfaces, heading toward larger bodies of water. So you can see that it's going down my mountainside and it's running to that big body of water that I have on the far right here. So step 4, when that water drop gets there, that is known as accumulation. Sometimes you're going to hear it called collection. It is the exact same thing. So accumulation and collection are the exact same thing. And it's basically when water pools back into these larger bodies. And then you notice it can start the cycle all over again. It can get evaporated and condensed and precipitated and so on and so forth. Now you're probably thinking, well, Mrs. Doherty, what is the deal with the plants? Well, as 5th graders, we classify plants. They have a very interesting job in the water cycle. So we know plants are producers, right? They provide food for others and they make food for themselves. Well, one amazing thing about a plant is they have a root system, right? So those root systems allow them to take water and go through the body of the plant. Well, the plant doesn't keep all of that water. There are times we've got our plant and the water can come up through the plant bodies. I'll show you with my arrows here. And it's basically evaporating from the plant. So it's coming out of the plant. And when it does that, it is not known as evaporation. It's got a funkier new special name. Its name is, and I'm going to kind of put an arrow and draw it down here just so I can actually write it. This is called transpiration. Oh, transpiration. Okay. So transpiration and evaporation. I'm going to put stars next to these guys. Very, very, pretty much the exact same process. The only difference is transpiration is evaporating through the body of a plant. Evaporation can come off of any surface. But transpiration will lead to condensation. So just like we had on the other side, we could have a cloud here, and then those clouds can lead to precipitation, and so on and so forth. So, since it's a cycle, it can technically start at any point, right? But I went ahead and just kind of numbered it. So, evaporation leads to condensation, which leads to precipitation, and then runoff followed by accumulation. If we look at the left-hand side, transpiration, which remember is evaporating, but it's through the body of a plant. So transpiration to condensation to precipitation to runoff or accumulation. So that's kind of the big ideas for the water cycle. Most of these things you should have known. The one that I would guess is probably new to you is this guy right here. Transpiration is one that you probably have not heard in previous grades. And maybe accumulation as well. All right, so that ends our diagram portion of this, but we are going to take a look at another diagram here in just a minute where we write down our definitions, okay? So this ends this part, but you're gonna need another sheet of paper if you ran out of room, or you can do this down below or on the back to move on to writing our definitions out.